lovelies! Last time we discussed the basics of shading, and in today's video we'll get into how to shade a face. As you guys requested in the comments, I would be happy to deep dive into this topic, as it is very important when it comes to represent and polish your artwork. I'd also love to give you a warm welcome back to my channel, or welcome if you're new. My name is The Wave and I'm a digital artist and freelancer. You can find me on Instagram, Threads, Coffee, but you can find the socials below in the description box or in the About section. Also make sure to subscribe and like the video if you want to see more artsy stuff. Now let's get back to the video. As for this topic, shading represents a really high percentage of your drawing. No matter if you're blending your shadows and lights in, or you're just cel shading. Both are very awesome and I use both in my graphical representations. But in today's video, I'll show you how I shade by blending in both shadows and lights. The video will be sectioned in two parts, the theory part and the practice one. And I do invite you all to draw with me. So let's get the class started. Alright guys, now let's go back in time a little, back to the ancient times. We'll talk a little about some itty bitty art theory. Let's take David here as an example. A sculpture made by Michelangelo. Now I won't bore you guys with when was this made and how and why, but the most important thing we will discuss here are the details about the lights and shadows. That's right. So as I said, here's our friend David. Now let's observe how the light hits the sculpture. I assume that this picture was taken when the light source was hitting the sculpture from this point. But we will only assume that, judging by the shadows placement. We can observe the shadow placement in the picture, and I will outline a few of the most important and major parts so we can study. So we have shadows casted under the hair. You can see it follows the hair's shape. Around the nose, under the nose, around the eyes, under the jaw, around the mouth, under the mouth, and some really soft shadows around here, and again under the hair, and around the hair as well. You can see clearly all these parts with shadows. And the light source that hits the face, you can see it the most on the face and on the chest, around these parts, around the nose, and of course the forehead, and around the neck, and the chest. So what we've learned so far is that our light source is striking the sculpture from above. So then our shadows are cast down by the most preeminent parts of the face structure and body that stick out. So then we got the following zones: the hair projection, the eyebrow, the nose, the mouth, the ear, the chin, the jaw. All of these are casting the shadows based on the light source positioning. Just like in this example I created from the 3D mode in Eucalyptus Studio Paint. And as the light source moves, the same does the shadows as well. But of course, in comparison with shading a box or a globe that don't have any kind of points sticking out as we do on the human body, shading the two of them will be different from this perspective. Except if we'd have a custom globe with different objects glued on it, forming different types of shadows, of course. Now we'll study a full body, and for that we shall have no other than the sculpture of Jupiter that's showcased in the Louvre. When it comes to old sculptures and art and history, it is known that the poses they're created in are usually very typical, and they were defined by certain rules. Meaning, in our case, left arm relaxed and right arm in contrapposto, which means that the right arm is showing movement. This was the way sculptures and paintings were made back in the day by our ancestors. Although it still is a very great way to show movement in a picture or sculpture and manifest energetic or different kind of vibes by having different parts of the body in various poses to create and show that movement. But getting back to the shadow issue, same rules we can see applied today in nature in poses, shadow, lights, and so on. And we can clearly see the same pattern on how the shadows are displayed on the Jupiter sculpture as well. So to sum it up, if the light comes directly into our faces, the light should be around the center of the face, and on the sides we'll get some shadows. Also, another way to study how shadows relate with lighting is in Clip Studio Paint. If you have it, simply grab a 3D model and modify where the sun or light source is coming from. I'll switch it up to one of the drawings I've been working on so we can eventually draw together and study the ways of shading the face and the body. For this part, I'll be working on Clip Studio Paint and on my graphical tablet. Here we got the close-up of our study. So first thing, I'll define the colors for our shades, and it usually should be at the quarter distance from the original color, which in our case is the skin. As well, the darker shadows will sit somewhere at the equal distance of the two. As in the previous studied materials, we'll define the parts of the face that are shadowed by the hair. As well, for this instance, the light source will be a natural one. After adding the lighter shadow, the next step is to add some more depth to the face by adding a more darker shadow and blend that in. As well, I'd recommend defining the shading on the nose, lips, around the eyes, so we can have a better picture of the face itself. Generally, I do this part first, and then if I see anything off or I'd like to modify anything, this is a good step to do so, as you can always come with more in-depth shadows and redefine the nose, eyes, or lips. Now, after defining the traits of the face, I'll grab a rosy color for the blush to add a little bit of more value and cuteness to the face, so it won't look that plain, if you know what I mean. I find it really nice to add a little shadow on the edges of the line art as well. If you're using line art in your drawing, it'll add a little volume to the whole face. Now on to adding some shadows to the hair. And honestly, depending on how you like to style your hair really, but personally I'll add some more darker parts to the strands that I find to be in the actual shadows and leave the parts that would be lightened up. And I'll be back when the hair is fully colored. When it comes to adding shadows to the body parts, you want to keep in mind where your natural or artificial light comes from, and as well which body parts are in front, in the back, and what goes where. So naturally, you'll want to add a darker shadow to the parts that go in the back, as they'll have a shadow cast on by the parts that are in the front. Same as we did with the shading on the face. We can go on to the body and shade according to our light source. Now moving on to the clothing. We'll have the same characteristics as on the body parts, of course, but keep in mind that clothing isn't just plain shadows. There are the folds as well, which will contribute to the shading, and we'll see that in a moment. First, we'll identify what goes in front and is illuminated and what parts go in the back, the same as on the body, and which have shadows casted on by different other parts that interact or overlaps with it. If you're unsure of this part still, you can always check out pages like Pinterest or just simply Google search some real-life references to see how does light and shadows interact on clothing or human body. I'll just fast forward until we have the piece done. As whenever I'm about to finish up a drawing, I want to retouch a couple of parts with lights and shadows. Adding some final touches of light can give so much to a drawing. So I'll be using a different layer for this part that will sit on top of all the rest of the layers. And I will choose a light yellow to give some sun vibes. As well, you can play around with the layer, set it to color dodge, glow dodge, or add glow, or just leave the layer as it is and play with the opacity to get the desired result. I used glow dodge on my highlight layer and lowered the opacity to 80%. As a conclusion, depending on your style as well, and if you're going for a semi-realistic style or cartoonish, keep in mind the shadow theory and the light source in order to place them on your drawing. And this is the final result. With a little background to it, you can create anything stand out. And that's it for today. I hope you enjoyed the video. Thank you so much for watching so far. And let me know in the comments if there's anything you'd like to see, and I would be happy to dive into it. In the next how-to series, we'll dive into color theory. And I'm also preparing some Draw With Me and ASMR content, so stay tuned and see you the next time. The wave is out.
Curious butterflies.
You mean bread butterflies?
Oh, yes, of course.
Points sticking out.